Hello everyone! Thanks for coming back in the new year to find out what else I saw in the last month of 2024. I must confess, as usual, I didn't get to watch a ton of movies in December, and most of what I did watch wasn't Christmassy. I feel like I say the same thing every year. In the second half of the month, I was too busy, and in the first half, I was on a mission to get through my Criterion Channel watch list before our subscription ended on the 26th. So, I watched a bunch of things that were absolutely not festive at all. And then I decided to renew, which took a huge load off my mind. I'm very happy about that. While there is a lot of stuff on that subscription service, that streaming service, that I don't care about, there is still a lot of movies that I do want to see or that I want to watch again, and it's a good investment for anyone who's a classic film fan, watches a lot of old movies. So that's great, got that taken care of, and that left me free to watch whatever. Except I didn't have a lot of time. So that's the background on some of my choices here, and now let's get into it. Movie number one is 1952's The Sniper. In this San Francisco-based crime drama, Arthur Franz plays a downtrodden, mentally ill guy with a vendetta against the female sex. In today's vernacular, he would probably be called an incel. Having reached his breaking point, he lashes out, his one-man war against women causing a public outcry as the police investigation flounders. This one surprised me. It's not just a noirish killer thriller, it's got a psychological angle, which thankfully didn't become too Freudian, and it's also got some mature dialogue. Despite the restrictions of the Hays Code, this 1952 film managed to discuss sex crimes with more frankness than some YouTubers and TikTokers can in 2024. This was directed by Edward Dmytryk. The photography is fresh, there are a couple tense, even shocking sequences, and it's got colorful and genuine characters. The supporting cast includes Adolphe Menjou and Gerald Moore as homicide detectives, Marie Windsor as a provocative pianist, and Richard Kiley as a criminal psychiatrist. While it might get heavy-handed at times, and there are one or two spots where the pace slows down, I found it a gripping, engaging film from start to finish, one that pushed the envelope in its effort to make a clear, compelling statement. Movie number two is 1944's This Happy Breed, a drama that covers the life of one family from 1919 to 1939. Light domestic squabbles and heartbreaking tragedies alike are chronicled in a string of vignettes as generations butt heads against the backdrop of real-life events, paralleling Great Britain's shifting view of long-standing traditions. Robert Newton and Celia Johnson are excellent as the parents pulling their young adult children along, though sometimes it's the children dragging them, for better or for worse. Co-stars John Mills, Stanley Holloway, and Kay Walsh also stand out. As adapted from Noel Coward's play, the script has a natural, witty flow, and the character types and their dust-ups are bound to be at least a little recognizable if you have any experience with a large family. This was directed by David Lean in his solo debut, with future director Ronald Neame behind the camera. This was filmed on pricey Technicolor, and it looks great, and Criterion's got a restoration that looks even more marvelous, a gorgeous clear print that makes colors and textures and the various clothing and hairstyles pop. I did feel some frustration when it ended, given where we leave certain characters. With war on the horizon, there's obviously more story to tell, and I wanted to know what was going to happen to these people, which is a testament to how invested I became in their story. But I understand the reasoning. The story begins and ends where it does, with purpose. It's not a complete fictional biography, but rather a picture of a particular time and place. This family, this house, this in-between period. Also, it came out in 1944, the outcome of the war wasn't known yet, and it's based on a play that premiered only 2 years earlier. I didn't love everything the film had to say, and there were one or two performances that I thought were undercooked, but I still thought it was very good and well done all around, bolstered by its leads and some delectable cinematography. Movie number 3 is 1990's Miller's Crossing. In this Prohibition-era crime drama, Gabriel Byrne plays Tommy, right-hand man to Albert Finney's mob boss. When Tommy finds himself caught between his friend, his girlfriend, and her brother, he relies on his wits to save his own skin before he lands in the crosshairs of a power struggle. We were looking for something else on Criterion and saw this featured on the homepage, and my mom said, "Ooh, that's a good movie. Have you seen that? You should see that. I'd watch that again." So we watched it, and 20 minutes into it, I wasn't really feeling it, nor did it seem like something she would have such a positive reaction to. So I turned to her and I said, "You've seen this before?" And she said, "Nope, this isn't familiar at all. I must have been thinking of something else." Like I said, I wasn't into it at first. I had trouble getting a feel for the characters. I let myself get distracted trying to figure out what city we were in, which doesn't matter. There are a lot of facts and faces to keep track of, and most of them are unsavory individuals, so for a little while I was wishing we had bailed on this one. However, it turned around for me. Honestly, I think it was the Danny Boy scene that did it, and if you have seen this movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's the first of several sudden bursts of, I'll say, excessive violence, executed in such a way that it verges on humorous. And as bombastic as it was really entertaining, and after that, the story picked up. I also think it's the kind of film that you can't help getting engaged in. The script is clever and it moves fast, so if you want to catch everything, you've got to pay attention, or else you might as well give up. I found myself glued to the screen as the plot went through its revolutions and the main character's plight became ever more complicated. It's an earlier Coen Brothers collaboration and a fine piece of filmmaking that features solid performances from Byrne, Finney, and John Polito as a rival gangster. It co-stars Marcia Gay Harden as the Mall, John Turturro as her brother, with very quick appearances from Coen staples Steve Buscemi and Frances McDormand. I thought the film was bold and refreshing, and though I may never find out what movie my mom thought this was, in the end, her mix-up wasn't such a bad thing. Movie number 4 is another crime flick, 1958's Murder by Contract. Vince Edwards plays a guy keen to make money fast so he can buy himself a house. He offers his services as a hitman and starts racking up jobs, but when he's summoned to a hit in LA, he finds the situation may be more than he's ready for. Here's another fresh, noirish thriller, and this one is lightened up by its fun guitar score. I say guitar, it might not be a guitar, I'm not sure. The music is downright quirky sometimes, and its style and omnipresence reminded me of the zither score from The Third Man. It's not the only thing that reminded me of The Third Man either, but I won't elaborate on that. Another element that spices things up is the pair of contacts the lead makes in Los Angeles, played by Philip Pine and Herschel Bernardi. They don't know what to make of this arrogant, nonchalant assassin, and with their deadline fast approaching and the boss breathing down their necks, they're increasingly exasperated by his lollygagging. Their interactions are pretty funny, especially in contrast to his sometimes off-putting, borderline sociopathic personality. And there are a couple other interesting side characters as well, and each of these people helped make this a more enjoyable film all around. Movie number 5 is 1943's Hers to Hold. Deanna Durbin and Joseph Cotten star in this patriotic romance. She plays a young socialite who crosses paths with Cotten's womanizing pilot while they're both giving blood. At first he pursues a flirtation with her, and then she pursues him, volunteering at the plane factory where he works while awaiting his orders. Technically, this is a sequel to Durbin's adolescent Three Smart Girls films, but you don't need to see either of those to enjoy this. I haven't, and I had a great time. Durbin is vivacious and charming as usual, transforming herself into Rosie the Riveter and rubbing shoulders with other women pitching into the war effort. She sings 4 solos here, including Cole Porter's Begin the Begin and the Oscar-nominated song Say a Prayer for the Boys Over There. Of course, Joseph Cotten is the one I got this for. When I found out that he was in a movie with Deanna Durbin, I was like, I've got to see that. Between the two of them, the charisma is off the charts, and I love getting to see him in a rare romantic comedy, which he was great at. But he was adept in every genre, in my opinion. And the supporting cast is good, including Gus Schilling as Cotton's buddy, and Charles Winninger as Durbin's wacky father. This is a genuinely funny film. It scored many smiles, chuckles, and all-out laughs from my mom and me. And while the romance is kind of predictable, it's still appealing, and there were a couple scenes that were touching as well. I was so excited to finally see this one. I'm so glad that I found out that Blu-ray players can play Region 2 DVDs, and it did not disappoint. Movie number 6 is 2013's All Is Lost, which stars Robert Redford as a man who must figure out a way to keep himself afloat on the Indian Ocean after his sailboat collides with a loose shipping container. I already had this on my list, and then my dad's barber told him he should watch it, so I bumped it up. It's a simple film that puts a heavy burden on its star. Since there's almost no dialogue and no other actors, it's all on Redford to carry the film, which he does admirably. I do find it kind of shocking, though, how little he talks to himself. This is not like Tom Hanks in Castaway. There's no talking, no singing, barely any muttering. As someone who talks to herself all the time, I could not relate. It's not an overly technical survival film, though certain parts may be of greater interest if you know something about boats. I don't, though, and I did okay. I do suspect I've consumed more nautical survival content than your average person. Not that it would do me much good in a situation like this. In style and substance, this reminded me of those stories you have to read in school where it's just a person silently struggling and problem-solving. Think Jack London's To Build a Fire, which, when you're a kid, is dry and dull and seems to take forever to get through, but maybe later on you read it and you're more mature and you realize, hey, this is actually interesting. There's desperate stuff happening in these paragraphs. This is like the film equivalent. It may be too quiet and boring and slow for some, but if you like survival narratives, and I do, this is an absorbing movie. Movie number 7 is 1941's Meet John Doe. Barbara Stanwyck plays a reporter who's just lost her job. On her way out, she writes a column about a man known as John Doe who's so fed up with the state of things that he says he's going to throw himself off the roof of City Hall on Christmas Eve. It's a Christmas movie, kind of. As intended, the column creates a stir, readers clamoring to meet this John Doe and hear more from him. But since he doesn't exist, Stanwyck, who gets her job back, and company hire a vagrant, Gary Cooper, to play the role for a few weeks. It's easy money until the movement takes a startling new direction. This is very much a Frank Capra film, with its political themes, its populism and patriotism, its hearty spirit of optimism that ultimately prevails in the face of corruption, cynicism, greed, and despair. And also, the cast includes a multitude of actors who worked on other Capra projects. Objectively, it's a good movie. The comedy is funny, and the drama is powerful. Stanwyck is Stanwyck, Cooper gives a dynamic performance, and his frequent co-star Walter Brennan stands out as his churlish buddy who wants to return to the streets. There are also noteworthy appearances from James Gleason, Edward Arnold, Gene Lockhart, Spring Byington, lots of people. The thing is, I liked it to a certain point, but I never loved it. And I don't know why not. I can't really explain why. I just didn't take to it. The premise has never appealed to me, and the only reason why I finally watched it was because it appeared on a couple classic Christmas movie lists I looked at. And I don't know about that. The action does build up to Christmas Eve, and it has some very festive imagery, and some might argue it has a Christmassy message, but I personally wouldn't call it a Christmas movie. Movie number 8 is 1947's Christmas Eve. A rich and eccentric old woman, played by middle-aged Anne Harding, sends for her 3 wayward adopted sons to return home for Christmas in order to prevent her nephew from having her declared too senile to control her money. Just when I was thinking I'd seen all the old and obscure Christmas movies, here comes this one popping out of the woodwork. It does have an interesting cast. George Brent, George Raft, and Randolph Scott, playing the 3 sons, are 3 entirely different types of leading men, and each one is acting out his own little story, which makes the film seem extremely fragmented, especially because the tone of each narrative is so disparate. This feels like 3 separate mini-scripts shoved into one movie. And I'm not saying that it doesn't work in the end, but while you're trying to get there, it's rough. Brent and Scott seem like they're in a rom-com, while Raft is in this sober post-war situation, and the whiplash of the jump from one to the other was almost too much. There are some nice decorations, and it's more Christmassy than some other pseudo-Christmas movies, but I can see why this one's been pretty much forgotten. Movie number 9 is 1989's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the misadventures of Clark Griswold as he desperately and aggressively tries to pull off the biggest, brightest, bestest Christmas ever. This is one of my brother's favorite Christmas movies. He watches it every year without fail. This was only my second time seeing it all the way through, and I think I liked it better this time. Certain mishaps and frustrations are more relatable to me now that I'm older, and that's in spite of the fact that I don't find Clark Griswold a tremendously sympathetic character. There are movies where everything keeps going wrong for the protagonist and you feel so bad for him. But in this case, because he's kind of cocky and kind of a jerk sometimes, when something blows up in his face, I don't know, I feel a tiny bit of schadenfreude, like, that's what you get for lusting after the woman at the mall. However, that's not to say that he isn't relatable and sympathetic, and he doesn't have some great lines. The one where he says, "If I woke up with my head stapled to the carpet, I couldn't be more surprised." And that is a great line. It's just such a great visual. It's one of those comedies that crescendos. It gets more hilarious as it goes along. The first act is kind of light on laughs, kind of not that funny at all, but by the time you get to the last act, it's this riotous catastrophe where everything comes to a head. There are a number of memorable scenes in the whole thing. I especially enjoy the whole dinner sequence where you've got all those wonderfully odd characters lumped together around the table. Something more technical I appreciated this time that I felt kicked things up was the switch to a handheld cam in certain moments of madness, like the arrival of the 2 sets of parents who immediately begin listing all their health problems, or the arrival of the SWAT team. It's a little thing, and you probably don't even notice, but the handheld camera enhances the feeling of mayhem and chaos, and it takes the simple absurdity of these situations and just makes it so much more outrageous. There are plenty of fun moments here, and I get why it's anyone's favorite. It never hits me in the feels like, say, Home Alone, because its sentimental pauses never feel entirely sincere to me, but it is a funny, crazy movie. Now, movie number 10 is a much more serious one, so let's shift gears. We watched this in the week after Christmas, and it's so entirely different in content and mood that I do feel kind of ridiculous talking about it next, following National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, but this list is in chronological order, so here we go. Movie number 10 is 2023's The Zone of Interest. In this World War II film, a German commandant and his family live right next to the Auschwitz concentration camp, where he supervises the methodical extermination and disposal of thousands of Jews. ever since this came out and I heard buzz about it last year, I've been wanting to see it, and it delivered. It is a thought-provoking, furtively distressing film. Not that you ever see anything, there is no graphic Holocaust-related content, but it's all about the implications. There's something about this portrait of idyllic life at the gates of hell. Is it humanizing these Germans, showing the relatable intimacies of their home life to remind us that, hey, they were people too? Or is it showing a peculiar monstrosity, that they can fill their lives with mundane tasks and parties and excursions, ignoring the horrors next door? It's through conversation and commonplace actions that we really begin to get a sense of wrongness, and our view of the characters begins to morph. It's, I'll say, fascinating to watch, not just because of the psychology and the uniqueness of the point of view, but because of the film's creative choices. Every element adds to the story or generates an emotion. Some of the most disturbing details are the most subtle. There are jarring juxtapositions, and there are comments people make that are flippant in light of what we know. And I should mention that the film does expect its audience to be knowledgeable about the Holocaust. So if by some horrendous oversight you're ignorant of what happened at Auschwitz, I think much of the significance will be lost on you. It is a slow-moving, artistic film. It does do some things that make you wonder, what does that mean? And it's entirely foreign language, mostly German, with very small subtitles. And it opens with a blank screen, holding on that for a full minute, maybe more. It felt longer, and you may wonder if your TV is broken. There were a couple times where I was like, is it okay? Is something playing wrong? But you start to make out sounds, and I haven't confirmed this, but my theory is that this opening is meant to prime the viewer for the film to come. Sound is big here. A lot of the terrifying reality of what's really going on is conveyed through background noise and how the characters respond to that noise. Thus, the opening trains us to listen avidly, straining our ears and attempting to distinguish distant sounds. It was risky, but I think it worked. And also, the end titles feature some of the most uncomfortable, unsettling music I've ever heard. It made me anxious, and I couldn't wait for it to stop, which I think means it was very effective, as was the entire film. I'm sorry it's not the most chipper and cheerful thing to conclude this video, but that's how it goes sometimes. And that wraps up what else I saw in 2024. I hope you enjoyed this collection of mini reviews. You can find the films listed in the description. As always, go ahead and share your thoughts on any of the titles in the comments below if you'd like, and I'll be back next weekend with another video. Thanks for watching.